Welcome back here on our channel. Today we have Patrick. Patrick is from Denmark and he's in the Danish national team of Epee. Hello Patrick, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Johannes?
I'm really good. I know Patrick since more than maybe 10 years, and we still fenced foil together before he switched to Epee.
Yeah.
Can you give us a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah. So as you said, my name is Patrick Joergensen. I'm 29 years old today. I
Happy
started
birthday.
fencing. No, not today.
Okay.
But as
Well,
of present time, I started fencing when I was 6 years old
wow.
in Denmark. And although I'm half French, I never fenced for France or trained in France. So in that aspect, I'm just 100% Danish. I used to fence two weapons, epee and foil, because there was always the possibility for me to train. Either I had some senior fencers on foil to fence with, or perhaps if they didn't show up that day, I could fence with epee. So yeah, and then when I was around 17 or stuff, there was a big foil group in the club, so I improved a lot on foil. Became very quick, became very competitive, and learned a lot. And that also reflected on my epee career. As a junior, my best results were in epee. My more stable results were in foil. And as a senior, my best results were actually on foil when I decided to go with epee, which I did in 2013. So, and since then, I achieved a World Championship medal in 2015 and a European Champion medal by teams last year at the European Championships.
In Düsseldorf, right.
In Düsseldorf.
What makes fencing for you so special as a sport?
So I always said that basically I love the sport, and it's something that I've actually grown to love. So when I started, I didn't like it, and when I was 6 years old, I didn't like it until I was 10.
Okay.
And then yeah, I won the Danish championships as 10 years old, and then I thought, this is quite fun. It's fun to be good. So then I started to compete and train more and lose weight and win more stuff internationally too, and then go on and challenge bigger and bigger competitions and become better. And the more I found out about fencing, the more I loved the sport, because it has so many layers. It's not enough to be physically good. It's not enough to be mentally good. It's not enough to be strategically good. It's not enough to be tactically good. You should be everything at once. And that's the exciting thing. And you can have some sort of idea about the sport, and then after you learn something new, and then you just like learn that there's a bigger layer like surrounding what you already knew. And then whatever you thought you knew might fit into this new reality. Maybe you just found out that you were lucky, and then every time you adapt, because it's such a mental game.
Right.
And I find that very exciting that to some extent there's a lot of this mental aspect that makes the game become more and more huge. But there's also this aspect that right now I'm working a lot on the fact that I think that people are overcomplicating the sport. And because they're overcomplicating the sport, they've made me in my entire life misunderstand a lot of it. And that's why you can put some kind of filters on you want, and you can extract the fencing style out of it and explain performance out of that. So it's very exciting, because it's almost like psychology, if you want.
Right. What do you mean by people often overcomplicate fencing?
So the recent challenge I have in my philosophy is that there's this famous sentence that says fencing is a combination of chess and martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very famous sentence,
Mm-hmm.
which I've been telling everyone, to kind of underline how much strategy there is in fencing that you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I started to realize that if you want, it's more like rock, paper, scissors and martial arts.
Yeah, right. That's
So
true.
so so I actually, and if you embrace that philosophy, then everything becomes a lot more simple and approachable, and everything starts to make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know chess is basically is done once, and fencing is done a lot of times because you have a lot of rounds.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one round in chess, and or you can have several rounds, but that's for hours and best of whatever, and goes for days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very quick, and if you're too slow in deciding, then scissors can beat rock. and that's the interesting part. So that's why I'm saying there's a tendency to overcomplicate things, and there's also a tendency to misunderstand things in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
um, so on one end, people are saying that things are more complicated than they are, but then on the other hand, they don't understand what things are and why things work and don't work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
yeah,
It's true. I mean, a lot like if you, I mean, at least I can talk about foil. If you watch like the top world class fencers, most of their actions are quite simple and super straightforward, right?
yeah,
Um, and but they are on the point,
yeah,
perfect timing, perfect moment, perfect rhythm, but
yeah,
basically easy action, and they
exactly.
don't overcomplicate things. That's very interesting that I also hear it from you.
Yeah, yeah, but that's actually a realization I got through the Corona period. Like, actually, I started to put words on it there.
Okay.
Uh, Before then, it was a goal of mine. Like 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, I lost my coach, and then I sat down with my wife, and we spoke about what's the goal for me
Mm-hmm.
when I don't have a coach. And then we kind of got together and found out, yeah, well, the goal is to have the simplest fencing style possible, because it's easy to train, and it's also the most efficient, because you don't need to be able to flick the back every time, or you don't need to be able to, actually you don't need it at all in epee.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice thing to be able to do, but it's not necessary. And if you start to be perfect at doing your step lunge or your quad period post, then you can actually almost become world class just in that.
Right.
So if you have that aspect on top of it, that you can flick the back or under or hit the foot and stuff, they'll just make you even better. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not your main game,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's a lot of people, unfortunately, what looks cool is these like more extravagant touches, but they should just fill 1% of everything. The rest should
Right.
just be classical, because we've been spending 4,000 years trying to perfectionate this sport as to what the most efficient movements are,
Mm-hmm.
and they are quite
Right.
simple.
Yeah, they are. It's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting because, like Dan Kellner in another interview, he was talking about his fencing philosophy, and he said, basically, either you start fencing at the age of 8, or you're a world class fencer. You basically hear the same things, which from your coach, which is basically like, sit down and bend your knees, start slow, finish fast, and arms first, right?
Yeah,
If you just not consider these 4 things, and you start to, let's say, freestyle, then things are getting, you're getting out of that frame, let's say, then things are starting to get wrong, and then you basically often get the touch, and
yeah,
it really goes in the same direction, right? Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely.
um, so the second question I would like to talk with you is, we were talking before, and you are basically working full-time as a developer.
Yeah.
um, how is it possible that besides a full-time job, you're still able to make such big and great results?
So so I the what I always say is that I'm honest with my surroundings. So when I look for a job, I tell them what the package is, and the package is that I might be smart and doing things good, but there are also this baggage that's called fencing. and fencing takes a lot of my time, and also travel time. So that is one of the things that I had to negotiate with.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is just being able to manage both lives. So knowing how many hours a week my fencing takes,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing how many hours a week my work takes,
Mm-hmm.
knowing how many hours a week my family takes,
Mm-hmm.
and then just sitting down and planning it out, and being honest with your fencing uh, community and your family and your work as to this is what I can give, and if you expect more of me, then we have to figure out how to make that work, and if the balance goes out of hand, then I have to say I cannot live up to that.
All right.
So if whenever, for example, there's a training camp in the club during the week, I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling them I cannot do it. I just simply can't. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Unless if you give me 3 4 months to prepare in advance, then I'll be able to manage my work life, to be able to reflect and come to training,
Mm-hmm.
because I planned it ahead. So I knew I had to overwork some days,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps it goes over my family, which also sometimes needs more attention. And so it's just basically, if you want, it's a way of managing your life and prioritizing. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't go to parties because I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
During this Corona period, I've had a social life, which is really nice,
Okay.
ironically. But basically, when the competition season is on, I don't have time. And when I'm not competing, then I like to stay at home and just relax,
Mm-hmm.
because I need that time too, and I need to give back to my family, which is supporting so much when I'm out and competing.
Great.
So the way I do it is basically I have a strong priority. I haven't seen my best friend for a year,
Okay.
uh, but I call him often, and that's my way of seeing him.
Okay.
So that is just being, and I think that's the secret to any success, basically, is knowing what your goals are, knowing what your priorities are, and just going for it.
Mhm.
And priorities can change, and
Right.
then you change your priorities and your life with it.
Right. So it's a lot about dedication,
Correct.
um, making also clear decisions. This is
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
get, and
Yeah.
then prioritizing based on this.
Yeah.
Correct.
Exactly.
Hmm. And isn't that still often quite hard? I mean, I assume you work the whole day and afterwards you go to training, for example, how you still be motivated and where you take the energy from to still perform at your best.
Yeah. Well, there's two ways of looking at it. Um, I could be sorry for myself, and when I come to training, be like, oh, my life is so much harder than everyone else's. I
Mm-hmm.
worked all day, and they just studied, so it meant that maybe they had 4 hours where they were at studies. The rest of the time, they didn't do shit. They played computer games or whatever. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way, which is the one that I look at, is that I do mental training 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I work and I use my brain at work. And what is expected of me is being able to design great solutions to technical problems
Mm-hmm.
using my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
When I come to training, I have to, after a whole day of performing mentally, still be able to perform at training also mentally. So
Right.
meaning basically I get a very good mental training that most people don't, because I can manage to still stay focused when I'm tired, because I train it every single day. Which
Mm-hmm.
means that when I come to a competition and I have a long day from 8 in the morning to 9 in the evening,
Mm-hmm.
that is what we sometimes have in Epee,
Sure. Yeah.
and it's not unusual because it's just a normal day.
Mm-hmm.
My day starts at 8 in the morning and it finishes at 10 in the evening, with training, and then I have to be there for my family and clean up the house as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough according to my wife, but but as much as I can do. Um, and so then the competition stage becomes so much easier, because it's on the mental side, it's not anything like extraordinary. It's just normal.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do it then in training? I mean, I assume, I mean, if you look at, like, let's say, for example, like fencers from big nations, like Russia, France, Italy, where they can train, basically if they want, or Korea, where they can train, let's say, I mean, in Korea, they often train 3-4 times a day. I assume it will not be possible for somebody who's full-time work.
No.
Do you think that, I mean, in fencing, the interesting thing is that more training doesn't lead to more success like it is in other sports, right? What do you think for fencing is, and how do you train? What do you train specifically then in your trainings?
So many different things actually. And the things change over time. So as I said, 3 years ago, I went through a transformation of myself uh, with the counseling of my wife, who came from handball.
Okay.
And she was elite, and she had a lot of knowledge, right? So a lot of tactical knowledge and a lot of theoretical knowledge about sports in general, based on what she saw in fencing and knew from handball.
Okay.
So she wanted me to be smarter when I was fencing. That took me 2.5 years to understand.
Okay.
But what the things that I started to work on was, as I said before, working on making my style simple. So I had to change who I was as a fencer for 20 years and change that, because I considered that the future for me was to be a more simple fencer, because I had the physical knowledge or the physical capabilities. So once I learned that, then I wanted to be a more tactical fencer.
Okay.
So then I started to work that. So that was kind of the theme for me last season. And now this period right now has been much more on strategy and real life tactics, like in-game tactics. So what kind of action should I do where, and kind of change the way I think while I'm fencing. So basically, if you want summing that up, so the things that works for me is to be smart about the way I train. Many people come to training and do what they're expected to do, but because I always thought, well, I'm behind on points because, well, I don't have the best training in the world, then I always try to say, okay, what can I do to make my training harder? So when I would train against somebody who was much worse than me, I would start to train things that I thought were necessary to be good at, so that I would still have a challenging game, even though the competitor was perhaps not as good. And then, so I was very good at having this training hat and teaching me stuff, kind of having lesson matches against people who weren't as good as me, because that way I would always get something out of every single match at every single training. And I think that's the main difference after talking to many of my fellow colleagues in the world, is that when I come to training, I always have something that I'm working, always. There's always something I'm working. And one of the biggest, things that one of the things that's been the hardest for me is to switch that off at competitions. So when I would meet somebody worse than me, then I would start going in training mode, being like, I have to prepare for the next match. Let's train this instead of just being hardcore. Let's kick his ass. So that has also been like the downside to it.
I see. Oh, that's great. Okay, got it. Hello everyone. My name is Johannes Puschanik. I'm the president of the International Social Skills Academy. With the High Performance Mindset Power Program, we designed something specially for fencers. In this 8-week program, we will show you how you can have better results, how you can achieve your goals, and how can mental performance lead you to success. Please take a look. We are very happy to host you in our 8-week program. And now let's continue with the show. My next question, I mean, we basically slide directly in the next topic, which is basically competitions, right? So we are part of the super strong Danish Epee team now, with a silver medal last year in Düsseldorf at the European Championships. What kind of feeling was it?
It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy, because I had the feeling in my stomach for 3 years that I knew we had the level to one day make a medal.
Great.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was so angry that we never did it. So I was very frustrated for many competitions where we lost in 32
Mm-hmm.
or in 16, but mostly 32. And I thought, even though we lose in 32, I know we're able to do so much more. I know we can do so much more. I know we can make it to a final one day.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it never happened, I just knew we could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I had no other, you know, uh, proof than my gut feeling, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when it happened, I was like, to some extent, I was like, finally.
Okay.
And to another extent, it felt kind of unreal because I was like, we beat Switzerland, which has been like the biggest rival we've had. Which whenever we've been close to doing a good result, they've stopped us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, no, actually 3 years ago, no, 4 years ago now, at the Europeans in
Wow.
Poland in Torun,
In total. Okay. Yeah.
we also lost in sudden death to them in the quarterfinal. So it was,
Okay.
yeah. So it was very interesting that that it was actually the same thing 3 years later,
Mm-hmm.
where we met them, and we all remember, and it was one of the big moments for us to make a quarterfinal at the Europeans,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to meet Switzerland, and actually this time to beat them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But no, it was a surreal thing, and basically what happened was that two of us we had a good day, and it's very rare that we hit the good day the same day.
Great.
And that's one of the things that we're working very hard on, is to have better days more often,
Mm-hmm.
so that we more often have good days together.
Mm-hmm.
But we too we had a good day, and we got us through the hard matches, which is Ukraine, who made a gold medal,
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland, who was world champions, and then afterwards Estonia, which is always a tough match too.
Always a tough match, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no. So what happened was just, I mean, we were lucky to hit the right day at the same time. Uh,
But do you really think it's luck? Um, I have to quote Dan Kellner again. And with him, basically, I was saying like, success is not a coincidence. It never is, right? And I'm sure you guys were working super hard, each and
yeah,
every one of you, right? I
yeah,
mean, I assume you're training together, and I'm sure you also, you learn to work somehow as a team, right?
yeah, yeah.
Together.
But
Um,
uh, but I mean, and you mentioned when we were talking before the FIE interview we had.
yes.
And one of the things that Frederick van Osten is saying really right is that, I mean, we had no culture when we started the team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had no one in front of us telling us how to fence teams,
Mm-hmm.
and that's both good and bad, because I mean, from what I've heard now from talking to others about their culture, it's not always good to have a culture if it's not a good one.
Mm-hmm.
But it meant that we had to try things out, find out what was our own way, what's a right way and what's our way. And after 10 years, we kind of found, a good standing position. And then we also had a French coach who also came with his culture. And then it kind of, because our own culture was so strong and his culture was so strong, we actually managed to make that work really good. And on some points we would nudge a lot because we trusted him, and
Mm-hmm.
on some points we were still true to who we were and what we knew worked, because we've had so many times, so many years to work it out.
Mm-hmm.
um
All right. So basically, always, as you were mentioning at the beginning, basically developing the system further
yeah,
and further, right?
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think? What changed? I mean, I will also, in the show notes, I will also add the video of the FIE, that the interview that you had as a team, for the Road to Tokyo, I think was the claimer.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think changed after your silver medal in the team?
um so one of the things that is one of the curses that we have in Denmark, is actually we're not good at being favorites. And I actually don't think it's many humans that are meant to be favorites, but we're not good at being favorites, especially not in Denmark, and it goes for any sport. I've seen our heroes in Denmark, the handball guys, and the world best, and they've been winning Olympics and world championships, and usually the year after you just see how they fall through.
Okay.
And I think it's a motivational thing as well. But basically, what happened is the competition following that was the World Championships, and we kind of felt the pressure of having made this medal, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking, yeah, now we have to do it again, ish, you know. And if and then all of a sudden you have this expectation that you know if you don't do it, then you did shit.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so the motivation is a whole different one, because where one, you're challenging the world and you want to make it and you want to show that you can do it. The next time you're challenging again in order to keep what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking down instead of looking up, and
Mm-hmm.
and that is not always good.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's almost never good.
Right.
So but yeah, so that was what changed after, and we needed some time to adapt, and it was my turn to have a bad competition at the first World Cup of the season,
Mm-hmm.
where I just really didn't hit the day at all.
Mm-hmm.
Also because of countless reasons probably, but I couldn't find the right way of igniting myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah.
But I mean, again, in the video, one of your teammates said, and this was something remarkable, I would say. We started believing that if we can win one time again, against big nations like France, Italy, Russia, whoever, Estonia in Epee, Switzerland, then we can do it again.
Mm. And that's true. But the story starts much earlier than that. So
Mm-hmm.
in 2005, I think, we're at the Europeans in Leipzig. No, sorry, 2010, Europeans in Leipzig.
Mm-hmm.
And the team was my brother, Frederik van Dorsen, who was cadet, and me. So my brother was a foilist. I
Mm-hmm.
was a junior doing both weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And or actually I was senior first year doing two weapons, and Frederick was cadet.
Mm-hmm.
And we beat Czech Republic in the round of 32, which was huge because they're a good nation. And then we fenced against Italy, and we were leading up until the seventh match.
Wow.
With a foilist, a cadet, and a junior.
Right. Okay.
Against an Olympic champion and what have you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that started kind of like our belief that, okay, you know, even one of the biggest nations, we can beat them. So moving forward to like 2011, I think, or no, 2013 in Kazan, we do a seventh place at the World Championships.
Oh, wow.
We beat China and we beat Venezuela. And Venezuela was a huge team as well.
Right.
And we beat Hungary, who in the match to seventh place, who was also reigning world champion. So from then on, we just knew that we could do it.
All right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And from then, and that's why I said that I knew we could do it. We can make a medal because we were so close.
Mm-hmm.
But we never did it. And it takes, and now I'm going to quote like the Swiss national coach called Didier Lignon, and he says something like at the training after that, and I think it's 2014 or something. He said, "Well, and you know, do it once, and people can talk. You might be lucky. Do it twice, people will still talk, but they will say like, you know, okay, he did it twice, but do it three times." And people cannot tell you anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it then, and it's beyond luck. You know, you didn't hit that one time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And basically, so we had this one time against Italy in 2010. Then we had the great World Championships in Kazan in 2014, I think it is. And then we had, since then we did a semi-final at a World Cup, and then the final in the European. So since then we've shown is not a coincidence, and that's why Denmark has become a nation on Epee that you talk about, and not just one that was lucky once.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at the story, we've been up and coming, and we might have been very late, and there's many reasons for that. But we're up and coming, and if we keep on this slipstream, then we can be one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm. So there is a lot. There is hope for also for smaller nations, right? For small nationalities to compete with, let's say, the traditional big fencing nationalities in some way. I mean, maybe not like at every competition, maybe, and maybe not on a daily basis. But even that is not true.
No.
But
But
definitely, I mean, and I assume what changed, like if you were nearly beating them one time, it also changes something in the mindset of the team. That's what I have seen in men's foil when we were fencing against China or Korea. We were also losing, one or two times, I don't know, 45, 43, 45, 42. But it was always close, and it struck me that the next time they were really like, okay, we won, but it was really, really close. So that's what you want as a smaller nation, right? You really want to be in the neck of that big nation. You have nothing to lose, right? Anyway, somehow. But you really want to give them the feeling that it's not a comfortable match.
Exactly. And then comes to the reason why we have success is that because there's no culture, we could make our own. And because we can make our own culture, we could drag on things that people would not otherwise not drag about. So we have in our team, we have my wife and one of our fencers' parents who's very involved.
Mm-hmm.
So Miss Frederick van der Oosten's dad, Hans van der Oosten, is making our weapons between each match.
Wow, that's great. Okay.
Right? That's amazing. And that is something that is a paid job for many people,
Sure.
like in the big nations.
Mm-hmm.
But we as a small nation, we don't have that luxury of paying someone. But we have that luxury that one parent is there all the time, and he actually volunteered to be part of the team in this way. And that makes him part of the team.
Sure.
Then we have my wife who's also following me around, and she's acting like a mother to everyone, not just me.
Great. Mm-hmm.
So it means that she will come around and support everyone and be part of, making sure that they eat, or making sure that they get the salt, or making sure that whatever. So whatever is not completely fencing related, she'll be on there. And if there's something that you really want, like you have your doubts or your thoughts, she'll be there to listen. And these are the things that kind of set us apart, because all these things is taking responsibility out of the fencers and making fencers focus on one thing, which is their fencing.
Yeah, great. That's
and
good.
and that is also something that the big nations have. They don't think about anything. They don't think about starting fee. They don't think about their weapons. They don't think about massage. They don't think about getting injured. They don't think about food. They don't think about money.
Mm-hmm.
They just come and they do their work, and they consider it like what they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the small nations need to learn and try to drag on the resources that they have,
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunities that they have, and the freedom that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the other things that's the possibilities of the smaller nations is that we're not alike, all of us, because we're not part of one system. We're together because we're good fencers, but we're each different.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're from a bigger nation, the likelihood of you being the same is quite big, because if you have a strong fencing culture, then you thrive in that fencing culture. If you thrive in the fencing culture,
That's
uh,
so true. That's so
yeah,
true. That's what I think you were mentioning in that video as well, that you're basically one of your biggest assets as a team is that you're four very different fencers. So it's always difficult, right, for the opponent, because okay, these guys are very different. Everyone has its own style. One
yeah,
is more, more emotional on the piece. The other one is very, very calm and waiting. And of course, yeah, right, if you look at the Russian team, of course, they're all very good fencers and very well trained, but it's nearly always the same system, right? It's in a frame.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And the same thing goes for the French and I mean, they're all coming from the same culture. The one that's more diverse is the Italian
Mhm,
culture in general, because
mhm,
it has a different approach. But
mhm,
basically, all the bigger nations, they have like a strong. Koreans is a perfect example. For example,
mhm,
they have a very very strong like culture, and the people who become good in the fencing culture, the people thrive in the culture, and they have very little individualism. You
mhm,
know,
mhm,
I know on Epee they're all very much alike. So if you like one, you usually like the others too.
mhm,
But if you like fencing against me, you don't necessarily like to fence against my teammates, because they have a whole different mindset and a whole different approach than I do.
mhm,
And that's also, as I said, it's one of our strengths, but it's also one of our weaknesses, because it means that I might have a good match against the Koreans, but
mhm,
the others might not like them at all.
mhm,
So as much as it's hard for all of us to have a bad day, it's also really hard for all of us to have a good day,
mhm.
because and a good match, because the matchup plays a big role and a big part for us and for the opponents.
Sure. Mhm. So true. Well, Patrick, thank you for this great interview and your insights on you, your teammates, and basically this. You gave us your ideas on how you did it and how you can become as a maybe smaller nation with less tradition in some way,
Mm.
and still make big results as a European vice champion title, which is such a great. So congratulations on one more time.
Thank you.
And well, I wish you and your family all the best.
Thank
And
you.
thank you very much for the interview.
Yeah, you too, and stay safe.
Stay safe. It was great having you here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.